Welcome to Access Europe for June 2025. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome a new presenter to us, Domenico Ruggiero, who is going to be talking to us about using Access with a whole variety of other Office and other applications. And the title there, Orchestrating Office, is designed to indicate the style of what he's going to be presenting today. He's got a lot to cover, so I'm going to pass over to him very shortly. His website, thesoftwaremaestro.com, is well worth visiting, and I've already uploaded the presentation for a PDF of the presentation to my website, and there'll be other materials to follow. Domenico, welcome. Please would you take over once you are ready to do so.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you for the invitation to be here as well. New to the community, but not new to the subject, and it's just nice to be able to find some kindred spirits here today. And I hope that what I'll be bringing to you all is just some new knowledge, something maybe you haven't been exposed to before. If anything, maybe you knew a little bit about it, you're getting motivated to do a little bit more. So let's go on with this notion of orchestrating Office or Access here. Let's look at today's program. We open up the program, we find out that there will be a little bit of warm-up, very, very brief, that just talks about what I hope to convey today, a little bit about myself, very little about myself, so that we can right into ShowTime. All right, ShowTime is where we're going to introduce the orchestra. We're going to talk about the alternatives that are out there. There's a whole bunch on the motivations of this and why orchestrating Access in the Office suite of applications really deserves a good long look, especially for businesses and small businesses, for example, individuals and more. And that it's not the answer to everything, but we'll talk about that. Then we'll get into a technical demonstration where we will demonstrate how Access sends some data over to Excel. That data that then is plotted in Excel gets dropped into PowerPoint, and then some of that stuff gets put into Microsoft Word. And if everything goes without a hitch, we'll have a wonderful time looking at that, and be happy at the encore portion of today's presentation to answer questions. So there are questions littered throughout that are there to provoke you to think. And I would typically be open to having discussions or questions be presented as I'm going along, because I may be on a particular slide. But I guess to borrow that theme of a show here today, for the sake of everybody else in the audience today, please just mute your phones and hold your questions until the encore period, at which time those thought-provoking questions will be presented to you again, and we can have an open conversation about the slides, about what you saw in the technical demonstration, and then just take it wherever we want. There is a lot of backup material, that is select case studies and things that have been done for custom data visualizations and other impact moments, that if you ask a question that could be represented by something that's there, I can jump to it and we can talk about it. That gives you a visual to go along with a narrative. At the very least, you have something you can go and look at later on that again provides some inspiration. Or if you're trying to take this idea to a boss, you can take these case studies to them and say, look at what I want to do. Let me do this, okay? And then finally, after our little encore period and discussion, I'll just wrap things up as kind of our last parting thoughts. And of course, who can deny some good laughs from Dilbert that always resonate with the real world? So let's get to the warm-up. So again, our objectives, I want to try to limit it to 20-25 minutes on the awareness section. So there's a lot there to cover. There's a lot of words. I'm not going to read them all, okay? I'm going to hit on the major points. You have the slides. You'll be able to look at the details within, okay? My point is, again, just kind of introduce the motivations. What is this notion of the AOAA framework, which stands for Advanced Office Analysis and Automation? Realizing those potential benefits that come from that, looking at those alternatives that maybe it's not the answer for everything, or maybe it's good enough for now. Go into that knowledge transfer where we're going to do a real life demonstration of it. I'm going to go through code. We're going to have 3 different instruments to play with there. We're going to have Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. We're going to pull all of them up and let Access talk to them and conduct them. And then again, as part of that call to action, that's going to be the discussion, case studies, things like that. So let's a very brief background on myself. over 20 years of experience going back to my early days coming out of college working for United Space Alliance. My background's not in software. It's actually in aerospace engineering, industrial engineering, engineering management. But I grew up with computers, learned how to program, and just like any of you, I'm sure you've been exposed to various languages over time and you didn't necessarily go to college for it. I did a look just to see if anybody does a degree in VBA. They don't. There's at best at some of these Ivy League schools, VBA and Excel as one class. Okay, so a lot of the things that we're doing here aren't taught in school. They're things that you acquire because it's a tool that you need to pull out of the box because it's being applied to a specific need. Then after the Space Shuttle Columbia broke up and the shuttle program was going to come to an end, I decided to make a change over to consulting. And for 16 years, I worked with Booz Allen Hamilton. And during that time, you're kind of an entrepreneur within a consulting firm. And over that time, I was on over 150 different government engagements. And I think, again, in part because of the things that we do with Access, Excel, and other applications, we can find our place in almost any type of work. Again, we'll talk about that later on. A couple years ago, I went to full-time doing this on my own. And so my commitment to you today is to convey, again, some of the motivations behind what we do here, some of the stories of lives that have been impacted, real human lives impacted, give you some quantifiable results. This is not an abstract, oh, things will be better, okay? Like I hear sometimes around the AI space where, it's still a little smoke and mirrors and who knows how much you're going to quantifiably get out of AI. I can show you real results. To share some of that technical knowledge, so we'll look at, down into the code. The UI itself that I'll be showing, nothing fancy, but the code is going to be useful. I want to encourage you to do the same kind of things to impact your lives and the lives of those around you, okay? And again, to keep my narratives brief, get to the demonstration promptly, and give you plenty of time to talk. And so let's get to showtime. So let's meet the orchestra. Who are our most common instruments or our most common applications? Okay, they are going to be SQL Server. We see that a lot in the Access User Group is the use of SQL Server as your backend storage location for your data, stored procedures, and more. But then there's a place for Excel and PowerPoint and Word, Outlook, SharePoint. SharePoint's still used. Then there's the peripheral applications that either feed into SQL Server, maybe some enterprise applications that you have out there, or the same data that you're storing in SQL Server goes out to Power BI for other data visualizations. Power Apps brings it in, Power BI has stuff going out, and you got other interactions, like I said, with other enterprise applications. Then there are the other ones that are possible, less common. I haven't played with the CAD stuff, but it is possible. It's there, along with some accounting, QuickBooks Desktop, which is, I don't think, supported anymore, but it's still available. They don't stop you from using it. Sage 50, I haven't played with that one. And then it's been a long time since I looked at the reference libraries in Microsoft Publisher and Visio. Again, not applications that have a whole lot of use. Maybe Visio more than Publisher, but it is what it is. It's Publisher is more of like a newsletter, business card, things like that. There are others. I will say there was a time when I had a MP3 player on my computer, and I happened to notice that the reference library for it showed up in Excel, and I created a button that started playing music for me when I hit the play button. So it's possible to get multiple applications to work together. And so why do we use these other applications? All right, so for starters, why do we love using Access as a database? Okay, there's lots of reasons. It has lots of features, got great user forms. The VBA code really gives a lot of extensibility, but what's the main underlying part of it? Access is actually a database, right? Here's the other thing. Excel is not a database, okay? And so for all those who know this joke and have heard it repeated multiple times, there's that whole notion of Excel is not a database, okay? Why is that? Well, data integrity, scalability, querying and manipulation, and more. Okay, just because there are a million plus rows and maybe a couple hundred columns does not mean that you can scale to that size. You'll just choke on it long before you ever get to that particular point. All right, so Excel, not a database, but Excel has a purpose. If those limitations of scalability, you're not trying to work with millions of records, you don't have to worry about multi-users, then a lot of the limitations become a moot point. and it works just fine as it is. You can store some data, you can create some stuff. Its flexibility is actually one of its advantages, okay? Whereas, again, a column with a data type and validation kind of locks you in. The very fact that Excel is malleable gives it the flexibility that sometimes you just need without having to reinforce all these other rules. You can get it up and going pretty quick. Good for data analysis, charting, custom visualization, even has user forms if you want to use them. There's plenty of excellent looking workbooks out there, including those that I've built. So I'm not ragging on Excel. I'm simply making the point that you'll hear again and again that Excel is one instrument that has a job. Use it for what it's used best for. Interestingly enough, I did see that somebody created a role-playing game in Excel. When I looked at the copyright at the bottom, I see that Carrie Walken is a CPA and has an MBA. So apparently he knows Excel very, very, very well, doesn't know C# or any other gaming platform, and so he built a game that he wanted out of the language he knew. If it works, it works. Let's go on this again, this notion of other applications. Microsoft Project, what is it good for? It's good for schedules, good for determining your critical path, resource loading, a whole bunch of things. It's not used for presentations, okay? Who has been in a presentation where they brought up a screen like this and then they go clicking around and they think that somebody's going to pay attention to it? The guy who's doing that presentation is a guy who works on the schedule. He's familiar with it. He loves it. The guy in the audience, the boss who's across the room can't make head or tails of it, okay? You use PowerPoint. And there's other tools, of course, for presentations, but you get the point. Use the tools for what they're used for. So improvisation can solve a problem in a pinch, maybe for a short period of time when limitations aren't going to be reached, but that doesn't justify that you rely on that when there's a dedicated tool to the task. Eventually, you want to put the knife back into the drawer and go buy yourself a screwdriver. Let's talk about data utilization and the potentials that come from that and increasing data utilization. So we've already talked about the combination of Access and SQL Server. Your Access SQL Server database may be perfectly sufficient as it is, doing everything that you need it to do right now, which is to be real-time information retrieval, get you some basic charts and visuals, produce some reports from your queries. And if that's all you need it to do, that's great. But then you got to ask yourself, are those products everything that's possible or desired? Okay, you've already expended resources to collect that data. We don't want that data to fall into a pit like this data robotic guy here is trying to avoid falling into, okay? This data is available to us. Why not get it to work for us? The full value of your data may still yet be discovered. And so you have to ask yourself, what other relevant applications could use that data? There's question number one for you, okay? Let's move on. With the prospect of using other applications, usually means that you become this guy. All right, I've got data in this source over here. Yes, I want to use Excel to do some charting and plots, but guess what? I'm the go-between. I'm the one's going to be sitting there typing it away. Or you want to make the PowerPoint presentation and you could just copy a spreadsheet, but you say, I want to flatten it up a little bit. Okay, so guess who's doing the translation? Guess who's doing the transformation? That's you, okay? Not fun. We've all been there. Nobody wants to be the PowerPoint commando. Fatigue, distractions, generally your motivation and other factors can result in data errors, omissions, and delays, which a synonym for data error, omissions, and delays is money, money, and money, okay? Something's wrong. Any changes to your data, your layout, your formatting automatically results in rework. And what happens when you decide to get sick or go on vacation, okay? Does that process continue on without you? And is that backup person as good as you if that person even exists? So clearly, we want more out of our applications. We want more out of our data, but the human part of this is an error-prone, variable part of the overall system with, frankly, questionable, repeatable reliability. So again, there's another question for you. So let's optimize the entire system for maximum results. Let's get the applications to do their part, right? That's not difficult. That's what they're built for. What is our role in this system? The best role for us is to shift from being that inefficient manual labor to a valuable innovator. And I make a point here to not say problem solver, because problem solving usually means that you're returning to what was before. Okay. Yes, something broke. I fixed it. I fixed that problem, right? It's back to where it was. But that's not the extent of our role here. We should be innovating. We should be doing something else above and beyond so that the computers do their part, we can do ours. All right. This may come up in later discussions as well, that this paradigm shift is similar to the discussions of AI replacing entry-level jobs these days. We hear about it all the time, especially recently. Now, the jobs don't necessarily need to be eliminated, just changed. Okay? In each one of these pictures, there's a guy swinging an axe, there's a guy feeding the wood splitter, and there's a guy running that tractor on the right. Okay? They're all doing something. They just have different skill levels, and their level of effort of their personal contributions goes from a lot when you're swinging the axe to just lifting the log and dropping it on the cradle to over here on the right, you're probably pushing a couple of buttons and levers. Okay, the level of effort we have, and yet the throughput is much greater through the right side of this equation. Okay, so let's talk about a real world case story to demonstrate this point. Okay, let's assume that Tom the cat here on the right is our friend Rodney. Okay, Rodney used to have to go every week working on his cost management reports. Now, again, there's a lot of words there. I'm not reading it all. Here's a key point. Every week, for years, Rodney was up after hours, late into the night, past midnight, working on cost management reports. Okay, we talked about the errors, we talk about fatigue, we talk about all that stuff. He had to be responsible, starting off around 40 or 50 CMRs. Then the company's growth exploded. And then he was dealing with upwards of over 100. It's over that now. And Mark can probably tell you, maybe it's pushing 200. I'm not exactly sure. Point is, he would have to sleep in his office. He's there all the night. It makes really not good sense to drive home. He's going to get in an accident being so tired. Better to just sleep there, get a few hours, be ready to go for the next day as best he can. Okay? So in comes what we called the Rodbot. Okay? It's the robot that replaces Rodney. Okay, automated solution. That's him right there. We got this thing automating and repeating the same process that he took, in addition to additional data validation and other aspects to it all, produced all of his CMRs, did them within 10 seconds each. That's generally the case there. Attached the finished products by project manager to an email to the project manager. So if the project manager had 5, he had 5 workbooks attached. And other benefits to it all, it does this in literally a few minutes, maybe an hour, depending on how many he has. If it's 10 seconds and there's 162 jobs in the queue on the right-hand side there, we're talking 162 minutes, right? That's not even 3 hours, okay? The thing is working for you. I'm sorry, that's 1,620 seconds. So that's not hours. That's we're talking, minutes, okay? All in all, more quality, better product. Rodney's going home at the end of the day. He has a testimonial on my website saying, thank you for getting my life back. Okay. He gets to go home on Wednesday, be with his family, have dinner, sleep in his own bed. Okay. That's a real life example of a life impacted. So how did we do that? Okay. We've talked about the technology. We talked about the people. Let's talk about the framework. What is advanced office analysis and automation? It's not a product. It's not something I sell. It's a way of thinking for us when we're trying to convey this to a client, a boss, whoever, of how this all comes together. And that is that we utilize proven methodologies, incorporating advanced capabilities of commonly used technology applications applied to a wide variety of knowledge domains to produce timely, high-value products. To use the Orchestra theme, we could basically say, I have sheet music that I'm going to have played by instruments of a specific genre for a particular performance, if we want to follow that analogy, okay? The methodologies, the statistics, the conditional loops, it's all the things that you were already going to do. We just get the computer to do it for us. Those are repeatable aspects of this all. So what are some of the other technical alternatives, okay? Let's not tout as AOAA and Access and VBA and SQL Server is the one-stop pony show that we need. It's not for everything, okay? But I think we can make a strong case that it's one of the best cases. It has a low barrier of entry and very high potential benefit, okay? It's built into our machines right now. You don't have to go to your boss and say, can I get approval to buy this? It's there. You don't have to pay for it. It's there. It has database integration. And we're already working in this space already. So it's not like we don't know it, okay? Not everybody's working with Python. You go down this list, you get down to robotic process automation, .NET. Not everybody's there. Your clients are not necessarily there. You may know those things, and that's great if you do. I know some Power Automate. I know Power BI. I don't really know .NET, C#. I don't touch those things. I love Python, but it doesn't, it has a lot of capabilities, but you're not always going to get a Python executable past somebody in a government client space, okay? Not going to happen, DOA. What's available? Where is your client right now? Where are you working right now? That, again, is one of the key points here. It is available to you now. You can start today. And this is a very interesting point. Let's say, if we go back to the previous slide, let's say you want to get to a point where .NET is needed and you have the budget for it, okay? You got the skill power. You got somebody out there, like my friend Matt, who can build these things for you, okay? You got the time, you got the budget, you got the skills. By all means, go ahead and do so. But to get there may take some baby steps. So let's go back to what we were talking before, the analogy of Excel, okay? Not a database. Maybe you're there right now. Again, you have some disconnected data sources and applications. You're generally the only guy working it at a single period of time. It's not necessarily the most efficient, but you like the charts and visuals. And you know what? It's still manageable because your data quality is not excessive and your process is maybe not complex. It's a tool that fits the need. Okay, that's your early stage. Then you start realizing my Excel workbook is starting to choke, and you know what? I don't want to email it to somebody. We need a database with multiple users. So that's when you start getting into these AOAA solutions. You're scalable, multiple application architecture, multiple users, automating tasks, doing all those things that you need to do with larger data sets, more complexity, doing all those things for you, including creating some custom data visualizations. And for most of us and where I work, that's a good spot. Most of the time, that's where we need to be, and we don't need to go any further. There are multi-million-dollar companies, including some that Mark works at, that are using these solutions, and they were perfectly fine. Okay, multi-million-dollar companies. They don't need to go on to more mature solutions. Can they? Absolutely. Will they? Perhaps. And if they do choose to do so, what you've built in Access, for example, might serve as the proof of concept for the later, more mature solution. Okay? So at that point, you've worked out all the bugs. You've got your data tables worked out pretty well. Now you just need a web interface instead of Access front end. Okay? Then you can get that into place. All right? Quick example on this. When I was working with NASA, I won a NASA software award for the shuttle engineering disposition system. Now, that was written in Cold Fusion. It was not in Access, okay? Wasn't in anything else. But here's the thing. I was a young 20-some young graduate out of college, and I would not have been able to produce that Cold Fusion application for the NASA Kennedy Space Center had I not proved the case with my Access solution first. It was that proof of concept that got the approvals from everybody up in leadership that said, yep, we need to do this. Take it to the next step. Okay? So again, if you are a person that needs to get into those more mature solutions, perhaps again, something in Access, AOAA based, can serve as that proof of concept for you. And so what are we trying to do? Ultimately, again, we get into this value, the benefits. Okay? We want to talk about our quality and quantity. We are looking here on the left-hand side of what you can produce manually, all right? I'm on this line of curve here. We get to time constraints. That's as best as I can do, right? I have to turn around some PowerPoint presentation or some analysis, and you know what? I have 3 days to do it, Okay, it is going to be what it is. My time constraints are what it is. I can only produce so much. Okay, so limited outputs. More is possible if you had more time, but those diminishing returns will never be, you'll never reach that point of diminishing returns. Okay, you're limited, you're capped. But if you're automating it, you're letting a computer do things for you. Now this curve goes vertical. Now you have two other things at play here. The first one is you've got a gap of time. Okay, what used to take hours is down in minutes or seconds. What are you going to do with that time? There's time recovered. Here's the other aspect, the value gained. It doesn't just look like it was before, it looks better. I have more output. Value gained. So we got two of those dimensions already being improved upon. And you have to sit there and go, as a real case example, what does that really look like? Is how we generated a catalog for an education company, an online education company. When COVID hit, as you can imagine, a lot of online schools got a lot of enrollment, and they ended up having 337 courses available from different instructors to the students. That was a task monumental for anybody to do by hand. We automated the process. We started it in the night. As you can see, it took under 4 hours to put a catalog together with 337 courses. It had over 1,000 images placed in there, over 11,000 blocks of text placed in there, and the total word count was almost 152,000 words at an average pace of 660 words per minute. There's nobody types that fast. That's a quantifiable result. So let's wrap up the front matter and get to our technical demonstration here. This is a force multiplier for you. Every solution is unique. Typically, again, it's not a product that's packaged and you just turnkey it. You're designing something, a solution that's customized to the person that you're serving. Sometimes yourself, it's your boss, your colleagues, whoever, but they're going to get more quality, more accuracy, more productivity, and hopefully more insight. Okay, it's going to do what you are already doing or what you'd like to do. Okay, and now we talked about that time gap. What are you going to do with all that time? Keep in mind, this is a program. It's a script that does jobs for you. It's not going to go shake hands. It's not going to teach you something new. Those interpersonal relationships of running your business, shaking hands at networking events, thinking about new ideas, developing your skills, when you don't have to be bogged down with those other tasks, you're free to do these things. How valuable is that to you? So let's get into a real technical demonstration of all of this right now, okay? This technical demonstration, I think we're right about on time here. This technical demonstration is a very basic but functional sample of Access conducting some work amongst multiple common applications. We're going to work with Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. We're going to show where it's flexible, how it can work with the user. Like myself and Mark like to say, sometimes we need to save the user from themselves. Okay, let's focus on a functional sample. Now, again, like I said, it's not a polished interface. We'll go through the code. That's the key thing. The code, the template, all that stuff will be posted later. We'll post it to my blog, whatever the case may be, we'll get it out to you. Now, remember, the process we're showing is data agnostic. What I will be showing is data that is synthesized of incidents taking place, and there are incident commanders who have to respond to these particular items. There's date information, categorical type of information, but the process and everything, remember, is data agnostic. Substitute in your own data for your own subject matter, and you'll be just fine. We're not getting into all of the aspects of the object model, but I will hit on some of the major points that you need to know if you're not already aware of them. And exploring all of them is all part of the fun, right? So again, this is not a, let's look at the object model, okay? We want to talk about the process and how these things come together. And then here's the other aspect that I would encourage as you're looking at this technical demonstration, or you are going to work on solutions in the future, is not to be afraid to have clients brainstorm ideas for you for a process or a product. Those ideas serve as a great challenge for you to explore and stretch your capabilities. So many times I've had somebody say, can it do this? Can they draw something up on the board? And I'll be honest, if I don't know, I say, I don't know, but let me find out for you and I'll get back. And I usually explore it. And most of the time, it's a yes. We just have to find out the process. That's the really great fun part. So let's get into that technical demonstration and then we'll come back to the Encore. I'm going to close PowerPoint for the moment. I have my orchestrating access database here. And let's go ahead. Let's see, make sure everything's ready to go. Let's tap the podium. This is Access taking the wand and going tap, 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 tap. Okay, let's get everybody to show up to the party. And if they open up on other windows, I'll drag them onto the screen. So I see one over here. I have Excel on my left. I got Word on my right. And here comes PowerPoint. All right, and over here on Access, it's going to tell me everybody's ready. All right, so let's get everybody kind of oriented in a good spot. So let's take Access and let's put you down here, sir. Or you're the conductor, so let's put you at the top. We've got Excel over here. Let's bring him onto the stage. And to just emphasize a point about data being actually dropped in here, we're going to clean out the data that's in here just so you can see that it gets it. So we've got a clean data table here. Let's get PowerPoint, put you bottom left, and Word, you are bottom right. And scale this down just a little bit. Maybe take away the headers off of here. We don't need to see all the other stuff that's associated with it. Get some of our real estate back. All right. So Excel, or Access rather. We've tapped the podium. Now we have an Excel workbook. It's ready to be used, waiting for the conductor to say, you're on. We're going to load some Excel data. And as you can see, that's dropping in there. There are faster ways to do this, but I wanted to just give you the visual so that you can actually see that it's doing something. Okay, so sometimes people like the flashy. Sometimes they want to see it. Mark on some of the solutions we have there, like for Rodbot, it runs even faster if you don't have it show every aspect of what it's doing. So there's an option to just basically kind of hide your screen updates and more, and gets the job done even faster. So he can try to beat the evening rush hour. All right. So it's dropped data in for us. Right. We have a query, have some table of content, and things are in there. Now, typically, if you do an export, guess what happens? It's in the format of the Excel query, or I'm sorry, the Access query or something to that effect, right? It's already in a column here, column there, and you usually have to try to maintain that, right? You maintain your column order. And at the moment that you maybe have some equations that rely on column C or D, and you've inserted a column or you've taken something away, all of a sudden you've broken something. We want to be flexible. So let's go ahead and, for our case in point here, let's go ahead and take all of our data. That is the black columns here are our data. To the right are some calculated columns that are untouched. And let's just, for the sake of it, change some column order. Okay? So there's start and end. I'm going to put incident type, and the next column here, let's take these columns and put them down here at the end or before the incident summary, right? So now we've messed up the order. They're to the right now instead of where they used to be, okay? Have I broken anything? The answer is no, okay? It's smart enough to say, all right, I'm looking for the matchup of my column from my query into this list table. And if I find the column in there, that's where I put it. Okay, so I hit the load Excel data button again, and there goes the start data, and here comes the end data. And then pretty soon we're going to see some stuff off to the right, because that's where we had it. That's the next column in the query. It doesn't matter the order of the table. We drop these things in there, then it's going to come back and drop in some of our other content. Okay, so as I mentioned, are there quicker ways to get this out, like one big block? Yes. Okay, demonstration purposes here. And after we get our summary, I believe that's everything pasted. Okay, so everything's good there. Now we have PowerPoint on our lower left-hand side here. And I have a chart. This is some data that comes from Excel. We'll get to that here in a moment. Over here in Word, we have some stuff. Let me open up and just make sure, as we look at some of the code here, let's go to Loop PowerPoint. All right, in PowerPoint, here's a key point that I'll make before we go process this content here. Let's go over to Excel. I have in here a worksheet that's called variable grid. And let me size this down a little bit. A very basic chart, matrix of sorts, that's taken two of our categories of our data. Those categories are the incident category and our severity level. Okay, we have some values that we can select here. We can pick a singular commander and we can see the results. Basically, it's a count if S equation, or if you put in a star, it's all of them, right? It's the wild card. So if we look at all of our incidents, we're dealing with 288 incidents in here. 16 of them are high, and it goes down the line. And we can see that. And if I wanted to look for a specific commander or look at a particular year, I have these two variables that we can work with. Now, useful as it is, again, we are usually the one that has to sit there and then say, okay, I want commander one, and then I want to look at 2020. And if I wanted this in a PowerPoint, guess what? I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to go over to PowerPoint, I'm going to paste it in, right? But let's look at the fact here. We have data that I think spans to 2023, 2024. So we have multiple years and 5 commanders plus the wild card. So we've already got multiples of possibilities, multiples of combinations. We don't need to be doing that. So here's something, if you're not aware of it in Excel, that is going to be a very helpful element of working with it, and that there are named ranges. If you notice that when I clicked an incident commander, this box here, which is our named range field, usually tells us what cell that we're in, like E3, but it's a named range. And I call that input incident commander. We have one over here for input incident year. And if you're not familiar with named ranges, you'll find them under the formulas tab for defined names. And if we look at all of them that I have in here right now, there's a couple. Let's talk about which ones we use. As we mentioned, we have our two inputs, incident commander. We can see it's showing right now the value commander 1, the year is 2020. It refers to a specific range on our worksheet. We have a list of pull downs for our incident commander, so that's just some legal values. Then I have this range that we're going to be using for our output, range of the category and level based on commander and year. That's referring to a particular range. Table 1 is our data table, and then here's some value, sum of high, okay? Each of these is referring to a point in the worksheet. So you don't need to worry about being hard-coded in your script if you decided that you wanted to move things around in this particular workbook. Let's say, as it is right now, it says that my incident year is here, right? If I click off over here and I say go to incident year, it takes me to that location. If I wanted to select the entire range that I'm going to be using as part of my picture later on, I select that range, it's showing me everything. Now, if I were to add additional incident categories in here to my data, that range automatically moves for me. If I decide that I'm going to insert some rows above here and a column to the left, I haven't broken anything because the inputs are referred to by that named range, not by F4, okay? So if I say again, if I click here, you can see we're here. When we moved everything, we didn't have to worry about renaming our range to C3 to K13, okay? The name ranges flex for you, saving the user from themselves, automatically flexing and working with us here. But those input parts that I referred to here are in our code because as part of a loop that I have in here, I want it to go through every combination of these values so that I can get the matrix updated with the calculations from those two variables and then use that to copy that over to PowerPoint. So let's talk about that here. We're going to loop through our content. Let me check on the end here. Let me just comment these out for a moment. We can do this incrementally. Let's talk about the code here. We have the global variables that are Access having control of Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. And right now, we're just going to work with Access working with Excel over to PowerPoint, okay? So we have our database. We get the variables for our loop, such as which are our unique values of the commander, the unique values of our year, and we also add the star as the select all no filter to our list of legal values. And we go ahead and we query our Access database for those incident commanders, right? If there's an incident commander, it's not null. Sort them in order, alphabetical order, and we're going to add them to our collection of commanders. Okay, we do the same thing for our incident years. Give me a distinct list of all of our incident years. We have the star one plus any other years that we have in our data set. Now we're going to loop through our commander values. For each commander in our collection, we're going to first put the value of the commander into Excel, into that formula. All right. Matrix goes ahead and updates. Also, for the year, as we loop through this, the year gets put in. And so for starters, it's going to be star and star, right? First iteration through of each of these loops is a star and a star, the overall big picture. Okay. Once we've done that, we want to, I'll uncomment this part, call add Excel range to PowerPoint slide. Okay. And we go into that. What is that going to do for us? Couple things. First, we're going to clear out anything that already was in there, and then go through. So there's some checking like, is Excel found? Okay, I need to know that it's there. I find the range that I want to copy. I'll copy that picture as a picture, not as like a table and get pasted in as a table. We want it in as a picture. Tables can be pasted in if that's the option that you choose. Go to PowerPoint, create a slide at the end, blank, and then just select that slide, paste it in, and then work with the image there. Now I had some stuff in here to reshape it. It looks a little funky when it gets out of the locked aspect ratio, but this is still commented out code you can work with if you choose to do so. And that's what it's going to do. It does this for each time of that loop. So let's go back to last definition, last position. Once we loop through this, we mentioned there's multiple combinations of incident commanders in years, then it's done. Once it's done doing all of our looping and exporting out to our PowerPoint, we come in here and we say, we're all done. Completed looping through all commander and year combinations. Let me make sure that, yep, right here is where we clear out any existing content. So if I look at my PowerPoint, let's close up this for a moment. I don't have anything beyond slide 2. If we did, there's some cleanup that basically says whatever I generated here before gets cleared out. So let's go ahead and process our content. And as you can see, star, star, let's going through here. My hands are off the keyboard. Okay, we're on slide 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 25, and counting. Oh, I think I'll take a sip of my coffee. Thank you. Oh, look, we're done. Completed looping through all of those combinations. So we had 2 slides. Now we have 32 slides. That means we have 30 different combinations of this data. I didn't have to make it. I didn't copy and paste. They're all there for me. Okay. If you haven't seen this stuff before, I hope you're going, wow, that's great. I really do. But now let's go through the story of Domenico. That chart looks kind of blah. Gray is fine, but let's jazz it up a little bit. Can we do some conditional formatting on the cells and their data? Sure, why not? Let's work with it. All right, data. Let's go to some conditional formatting, which when it's collapsed like this, let's find out where that is. Probably under home. Conditional formatting. Let's do color scales. The more, the worse, right? But let's go to white so that if there isn't anything there, I'm not worried about it. Okay, so we're highlighting the worst cases and leaving white anything that might be 0. Makes good sense, right? All right, so we've applied some conditional formatting. Could we do more? Yes. I just want to focus on we made a change, all right? Yes, sir. I'd be happy to go get you those updated graphics. Now, I don't have to go back to my desk and do all these for the next hour. I simply say, oh, do it again. All right, cleared out my content. I think I will get another sip of my coffee. Yep, those charts look pretty good. Lower right-hand quarter is always going to be the most read because that's the highest value. But What do we got here? Trying to paste. Sometimes that's the clipboard. If it goes too quick, sometimes the RAM doesn't keep up with you. And there's ways that you can, if you encountered an error, just basically loop back and say, try again, try to copy and paste again. But let's see, that was the task, the ask of you. You're like, done. Here you go, sir. And he goes, how'd you do that? And he's like, I'd love to show you. I'm like, ask for a raise, please. Something along those lines would be great. Okay. So we've got Access, controlling Excel, building us some PowerPoint slides. But then I got Word over here too. And let's play around with that a little bit. So when we deal with Word, let's say we want the same table into Word, but I only want it when the commander is not all, but it's all of the years that the commander had to do something. Okay. So I have a condition in here. This is our conditional logic aspect of it all that says, if my commander is not everybody, but my year is all years, then go ahead and paste my Excel range to Word. And let me just check something in here. I did want to check on something. I don't want it to go to the end. I want it to go to a specific location.
Domenico, while you're just searching, just to say it's about 45 minutes in. About another 10 minutes, is that enough?
Yeah, to try to wrap it up here. Everybody's going to have the code here. They're going to be able to play with it. So let's put this to the side for the moment. If we have questions, we can go look at it. But let's give time for people to kind of do that encore. So let me go ahead and bring up those slides and those questions. And let's continue on with that particular part of today's broadcast. So let's jump down to where we were and let's hit the encore and get some feedback. I haven't been watching anything in the chat, so Colin, you can throw them my way or we can open up. I'll let you moderate this, but here's some discussion questions and I'd be happy to take any and all.
At the moment, there's no questions in the chat ready for you to go. So I'd just like to say your summary of using the power of the different Office apps to get the maximum effectiveness from each was excellent. And I wish all of my demos were as slick as that. I suspect most people that have automated Excel and Access together, I suspect the number of people who've done that with PowerPoint is relatively few. Certainly, I've not tried to do what you've done there. Please carry on.
So let's go back to the technical side of things here then. We talked about the power of named ranges in Excel, and the equivalent of that in Microsoft Word is going to be bookmarks. Okay? Bookmarks can move. They define a specific area. They can be collapsed to a 0 point, but they can contain a range of content. Okay? And let me go ahead and go full screen on this for a moment. I have two bookmarks in here at the moment. And you can find bookmarks under the Insert tab, and bookmarks are here. And I have two. One is a template that I have at the end. So if I say go to, it takes me to it. It's like, again, like the named range, it's selecting a block of content. Okay. The other part of it is I have one over here. And I just tongue-in-cheek called it my construction zone. Okay. Essentially, I have some template content on the right-hand side. I have a spot on the left-hand side where I might want to put it. Okay. Those two parts in their place here. Let's go back to Access and how that might work with these particular parts. Well, let me explain the concept behind this. While there's code to bring a picture into here, similar to like we did with PowerPoint, the other part of it is to say, I want to take this block of content here on the right-hand side, and I want to use that as a template by basically, if I had to do this by hand, it would be saying, go to the template area here, copy this content, right? I've copied. Go to my bookmark. This is me doing it manually just to show you the point, the process here. Go to my construction zone, which brings me over here. Go back one step and paste it in. Okay. Now, before I pasted it in, I will note the position of where it was, and then I'll note the position of the cursor afterwards, and then I'll set that up as a range of text that I'm going to manipulate, I'm going to work with. And in our case here, replace content these tags with content. All right. So I don't want to replace, if I'm replacing incident end with a date, I don't want it to replace incident end throughout the entire document because then I've ruined my template. The template needs to be fresh. Okay. I'm actually going to just say over here, select this area and only work within this area. And if and when you find this tag, replace it with the content. Okay. What is the advantage of that? Is that I could sit there and I could put together a template that looks like this, that says, I want the start date here, the end date here, and the type and the category and the commander and all that kind of stuff. This is the layout. And you could generate this, but then boss come back and says, that looks great, but I want you to do it a different way. Okay, let's see what Adrian said here. When working with the application automation, especially if it's not already familiar with it, it's important to remember that each Office application has its own defaults, right? Objects as well as their properties, which are not honored when controlling application from a different one. That is correct. Here's an important part. Thank you, Adrian. That actually is prompting me to really mention something about early binding, late binding. You're probably already familiar with it. If you're not, I'm just going to explain it in brief. We can go into the VBA editor and we can see which version of Office, Excel, et cetera, is in there. But if you notice, I'm not using the Excel library. I'm not using the PowerPoint library. Those are not switched on. They're not part of early binding, right? They're there, but I may not know, depending on, if it's for myself, not a big issue, right? But if it's somebody else, I don't know what version they're working with sometimes, okay? So by not specifically calling out 16, if a person has 15, it uses whichever one is there. Yes, you still have to worry about you're trying to do something with a problem I encountered is we as Booz Allen had Office, whatever, 365, and the client's working with 2013. In one case, they were dealing with Access 2003. And after I built them a database, we learned that it doesn't work on their computer because they're dealing with 2003. And we had to rebuild everything in their environment. Those kind of things. So versioning, you might be basically trying to do something with a particular type of chart that doesn't exist in their environment. So keep that in mind. But all that being said, the commonalities of named ranges and other aspects still apply there. But I'm doing late binding. It's a little tougher to code-wise because you don't have all of the IntelliSense pop-ups that can help you with that. And you can always do early binding for coding and then switch it to late binding when you're going to deploy. But yeah, up here, if you notice in this sample, there isn't anything other than the defaults. And you do definitely want to call out what it is that you're working with. So, copy in Excel or PowerPoint or something, you need to really definitely get that object defined because you wanted to know where to do that. Good point there, Adrian. The example I've given of a Word template is here. Let me throw another one up onto the screen here, which I think would be helpful. So the course catalog that I referred to, okay? There's static content in here, front matter, that kind of stuff, all right? Then you got the table of contents, courses at a glance, and let's zoom in on here. And let's go. I thought I had it. All right. Bookmarks galore in here. Okay, let's go and see how many bookmarks are in here. Insert bookmark. I've got a course collection, course icons for pictures, a location for course matrix, the courses at a glance, course row, space row, subject row, working row, instructors, matrix icons, and more. Okay, lots of bookmarks that the code looks for and then places in there. And when it comes to building out something like this table, there's two things that it'll do here. Let's say you're grouped by subject area. You got a query, it's looping through. At first, there's a blank row, and then there's the working row. The blank row is just as a spacer between the template content and then where you're going to put in your stuff. And if I did this by hand, again, just to show it, because we don't have time to pull up the code, but if I said I want my subject row, and I say go to that, and I were to copy this in computer, and then I said, all right, well, I'm at courses of glance. I want to go to the working row. So now I've done that, and I say paste. You'll notice that my template content has come down. And that is the area that in my loop, I would paste in the subject area. And there's code in there that says, all right, well, what's the subject icon? All right. If the area is computers, then we're going to go to the location of where there's a computer. All right. So let's go to our course icon for computer science or computer skills. Okay. So we'd go to that. And this is a bookmark on just the icon. This is stuff in the back. And that would get copied. And then we would go back. This is all programmatic. This would be happening programmatically. Go back to our row that we just created, and it would find subject icon as a text, right? Let's say this is what then got selected, and it would paste in that picture. Too many cells. And it would paste in our picture because that's where we said we wanted it. Okay. And then if we wanted the course details, it would do the same thing. The bookmark, we'd go to our course row, go to that, copy that content, bookmark, go to our working row once again, and we paste it in, and the whole process repeats again. Now, if this was new, it would get an icon, right? Those kind of things. My point in all this is I'm showing you kind of the pseudo aspect of this all. It's like a little dance, right? We loop through, and we built one for just this. We built one for the courses. If I go to the end and I look at all of my template content, we have a template for the course with a bunch of brackets, these place marks for lecture dates, the registration costs, the description, prerequisites, the registration URL, everything. And I have one location for that course page here. If at any point, when we talked about this course, this catalog having 300 and some plus items in there, they said, you know what? We want to put this here, that there, bold that, this, that, put these things above here, and you had to rework that by hand. It's impossible. Okay. Here you change the location by simply cut, paste, like, oh, I would like the special notes at the end. Okay, we'll take the special notes, cut it out, take it to the end, and paste it in there. All right, done. We're done with that edit to the template. Run it again. No code needed to be harmed to make that change. I hope that's going along well here. There's the new course graphic, smaller versions of the pictures for the different matrix displays, all that addendum. And what does that look like, again, as a finished product? So let's go back to my slides for a moment. All right, this is what the catalog used to look like. Very text heavy, no pictures, a little bit of color. We get to the finished product, and this is what the catalog looks like. What we were just talking about with the headers for computer skills and each of the courses being spelled out, you literally just watch it go boop, bloop, 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 little dance happening. Course matrix, each one of these is its own independent column with a table within it. Each one of these gets built out. Every one of these has its own tag. We've reused the data multiple times. Again, going back to what did our catalog look like, it was all text. There was no summaries, no courses at a glance, no matrix display of when the classes take place during the course of a week or a time slot. Let's say you were only available on Tuesdays between 9 and 3, you got soccer practice in the evening, so you're like, okay, well, these are the courses that are available. These here towards the late in the afternoon, we can't take. And then everything here is hyperlinked as well. Every one of these items that had a page number was hyperlinked in the PDF, and then you can jump exactly right to it. So it made great, easy navigation for anybody trying to go through our documents here. We extracted an immense more amount of value out of that data set. Are there any other items here that people would want to ask about, talk about, see? There's cost estimation, which is more an Excel based. We have this touch screen in PowerPoint, which used Excel, SQL, access all these applications. And then the other aspect of this all is just a couple data visualizations, a stack chart, and some risk management items. Is there anything here that people would like to see or have talked about? I'm happy to talk about them here.
Well, just to warn you that a couple of people have apologized and said brilliant presentation, but they are now
Indeed.
having to drop out because of time constraints and so on. So there is a comment from Rachel that has just come in this second here,
All right,
which I haven't had a chance to read. Awesome, thank you, Domenico. Concept is exactly what I need. My mistake has been trying to make Access put my reports and charts together, but after seeing this, it makes way more sense to output the data to the program that handles the data best.
So Rachel, thank you very much. My objective of making sure that I imparted some of this knowledge and to give you a demonstration and hopefully let on some light bulbs of what's possible. You've told me that I've done my job here today. Thank you very much. Appreciate that comment.
I think you nailed the idea of that perfectly, Rachel. Thank you. I mean, I think you mentioned early and late binding earlier. Just most of you will know this already, but if you use early binding, you get IntelliSense, but you then have to specify the version of the application whose reference library is, and that causes problems for people with an older version. If you use late binding, you avoid that problem. You have to specify everything, but of course you lose IntelliSense. Now, John Mallinson is the author of VBE Extras, and he has got something that combines the benefits of both of them, which
Nice.
is called special binding. John, are you still here?
Hi, thanks, Colin. Yeah, I mean, essentially, special binding allows you to use late binding while coding, but also see, for example, the members of an object live in your code. So, for example, if you're using Access and developing some code that's automating Excel, you can declare the object that you're working with as object, even though you know it is Excel. And what special binding will then do, based on a couple of code comments that you add, is understand that that object is Excel, and it will actually go and parse the relevant type library and show for you the members that you can use, or for example, enum values and so on. So it can be quite beneficial if you don't want to distribute an application using early binding, but do want to code with late.
Thank you, John. I would strongly recommend anyone who hasn't heard of VBE Extras to look at the YouTube video from February when John actually did a presentation for Access Europe, and he also did at Access DevCon as well on when I recommended him to Carl Donabauer. Very powerful application and well worth trying out there.
No worries. No, you're hitting right on something I was going to mention as well here, and that notion of all the different methods and properties, et cetera. And of course, that includes your enumerated constants. And I have to spell these out in here because of late binding. And so blank layout, it's the same variable that you would have used, but I have to set it here. You're basically saying it's going to be available to you, and all those constants would be there. So that saves on coding. You got the IntelliSense for helping you with the development and then the deployment of it as well. That's great. Thank you, John.
Brilliant. Thank you. Right, can I just ask, we've already got the PowerPoint, or rather the PDF of this, available on my website. I'll bring up the link again later. What are you going to make available to us in terms of these demos so people can try your very slick demonstration?
Very good question. So what you're going to get is I can put together a PowerPoint show version of this that will allow for some of the animations with regards to, let's go back a slide here. Some of my case studies have what I call like an image wipe. So when you look at it in a PDF, you're only going to see the top layer, the first picture. As a PowerPoint show, you'd get the ability to wipe through these. So there's nothing really wrong with the PDF. You get the essence of it all. The show would give you a little bit more interaction. You can click on these things. But then the other aspects that you're going to get will be the Access database, the Excel workbook, the PowerPoint presentation, and the Word document. So 4 files all bundled together. I'll put it all together as zip file. The templates, what we call the instruments, will need to be in their own subfolder. So if we look at the way I've got it into my folder structure here right now, you're going to get the Access database, the PowerPoint show, and then the subfolder has instrument templates. And those are the Excel instrument, PowerPoint, and Word, just using that concept of instruments. And then that's about it there. You could always, we didn't go into like where you would want to save this as far as an export is concerned, and having a folder that says, okay, every time I build a PowerPoint at the end of the process, go ahead and save it for me automatically. Like, again, the cost management reports, those are being generated, and we don't leave the template open all the time. We finish working with it, we save it with a unique file name, we close that working file, and then we reopen the template again, and we work through that process once again. Excel as an application stays open, but the workbook itself will be worked, saved, closed, reopened, and repeated throughout the process there. So we don't have an export save as anything along those lines, but your templates, you will need to put the templates in the same location as the Access database. Put it wherever you want on your computer. It will see where you've put it and then know to go to the subfolder for your templates for your instruments.
I'll get you to attach a short text file
Yes,
with
sir.
the zip file, please. Give those instructions, because obviously
point.
people will download who
Yeah,
watch
that's a
the
good
video later on. Yeah. So Klaus is just combined.
He's done it all.
He's done it all. Yeah. Access, Excel, PowerPoint, Word, Outlook, Visio, and PowerShell all at once, Klaus?
Not at once with Visio. Visio was special. The other ones, yes.
That's very impressive, right? You've just lined yourself up for another presentation in a future month there, Klaus. Well done. I've volunteered you. Neil's got Acrobat in there.
Yep, Acrobat can be used with VBA.
I didn't, honestly, I mean, it's so many years since I used WordPerfect. I didn't even know you could. Is that genuine, Eric? WordPerfect, yeah.
Yeah, I can't stand Word. But
Yeah, because I've bought
Word is a software engineer's Word is a software engineer's idea of what a document generator should be. My initial training was as a lawyer. The efficiency of WordPerfect is.
I used to love it, but I must admit it's years since I've seen it now. And somebody, of course, we forgot SharePoint, which of course quite a few people will have used. I'm going to ask, how many people here? You can put a response in the chat if it's easier, or on the screen. How many people here have actually used Dataverse in any serious way? Not a single person has responded to that. And nor have I. There's lots of reasons why not. Right, I'm going to pause you here and say, again, lots of people have said thank you very much. And we can come back to you, Domenico, but we'll get all of your stuff available on my website there. Go on, just quickly, people a chance to look at Dilbert there. I did laugh at these when I saw your presentation. I've seen them before, but not for a long, long time.
So this is the one where he's not rewarded for his level of efficiency, and now it basically he's got the Scotty syndrome, like Scotty from Star Trek. He's the miracle worker, and everybody expects him to always be able to accomplish everything, and like now. And then this is my favorite. He automates the task used to take him 3 hours, and the boss essentially is saying he's lazy for having done that. We all know differently. Goes back to that notion, what would you do with your time? So anyhow, thank you all very much for this opportunity to present to you, and I look forward to future engagements. Thank you again, Colin, for the invite. Back to you, sir.
You're welcome. All right, and if you can hang around and have a look through the chat and see if you see anything else, I will just apologise for the fact with your backdrop there, I remembered the Excel flight simulator from Excel 97 and managed to divert the chat for several minutes there. But if I just share my screen again, hopefully we've got the PowerPoint on there. Right, so Domenico's PDF will be available probably from his website. It's already on my website, and it will be on the official user group website as well. And any other files will be zipped together. They'll definitely be on my website. And there is a problem with the official site of file size limitation, and you can only put one file on there, so they may or may not be at the user group one, but they'll definitely be on my website within the next few days. Right, I'm going to pause there for a second. I'm going to move over to next month. Hopefully Pete Poppe is still here.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, because you've put
okay.
your microphone on, you've moved to the top of the screen there. Right, so next month we have the return of Major P, Pete Poppe, who is going to be doing, I'm not going to try and explain this, I'm going to let you
and I'm going to leave
explain
my
it.
video off because I'm bad connection. So hit the chat if I start fading in and out. I'm in a location that's not so great. Just give me a sound check, Colin. You do hear me good?
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah. So last year I did a presentation on tree views, and that's kind of a good segue or an example of what I'm thinking about for that next presentation. And that's really building user interfaces to handle working with data that isn't really done easily with your native out of the box controls. Yeah. Right now I am working with somebody who is building a pretty complex database. They reached out to me about the tree view. And that's just an example, but it's a good example in that any other native presentation, maybe it could be done, but the information just would not be intuitive. And so a tree view is a good example of using a non-native control to present information in a way. And what often happens is people then feel compelled to build their data non-normalized in order to support the presentation. So, yeah, I'm not a professional developer. I don't do this for a living. I call myself a powered DIYer, but I do reach out and help a lot of people either contact me directly or I do it from on the forums. And so from examples of stuff that I've done in the past or problems that I've seen users get into, I think there's a lot of tips and tricks and workarounds that we could discuss. Often this is the concept of people doing Excel in Access. I need to have my data in the table this way with a bunch of columns in order to support that columnar view. But it's not always the novice developers. Sometimes when it gets more complex, like for example, like the hierarchical data, you have to kind of think out a little different out of the box. So for the upcoming presentation, I'd like to look at these tips, tricks, and things I've done in the past and maybe make this a little more interactive with the group, because I don't see any of this being kind of earth-shattering. Hey, here's some complex code to do that. But maybe, hey, I've thought of doing it, presenting it this way, or making a kind of an interface to do this. And maybe you have some, great ideas on how to do that. Some of the common problems I see are the scheduling problem where you have, hey, you want to block out the room and you have these time slots. And that's one I see traditionally where people build this very non-normalized just to do that. The calendar control, you want to show stuff on a calendar, you want to show it on a year view. Obviously, for me, the hierarchical data, I do a lot of stuff with the hierarchical data. So tree views is a good example. Checklists, people want a checklist. They want to add things, click, 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 and add it. There's not a great native control to do that. I call it the pseudo multi-value. We kind of want to get away from that multi-value control, but we want something similar to that. One I've worked on recently that paid off is I call it the graphical assignment. You want to drop an object somewhere onto an image, and then we'll record that information. And now you've pseudo geolocated that information. And then maybe workflows is another one I see where you want to do something, hit a status and move it on. So those are kind of common ones. Some of the things, the techniques maybe that we'll talk about is using those in-memory ADO record sets. You can do a lot with that. So you can build on the fly without even a table, something that you can bind to a form. Temp tables, cross tabs, and making that seem to be pseudo-editable. Grid views, unfortunately, Access doesn't have a grid view. If there was any control I would ever want in Access, a grid view, but can we do it like a pseudo grid view? And then I'll talk a little bit more about the tree view, but I won't spend a lot of time because we did that in the past. Now, I will put a caveat. I am not a fan of writing code or coming up with solutions where they don't need to be made. So I'm not a fan of, hey, I'm going to build an unbound form just because I can. I'm going to use Access for what Access was designed to do. I'm not going to write tons of code if I can do it in a SQL solution. But I think these will be examples of things that, hey, you might not have thought of. Maybe this is a little bit a better way to present that information. For a good example is the combo box. That's the most flexible way to pick someone from a list. But what happens when you have a really large list and maybe you don't know exactly what you look for? So you need to do some searching, maybe some filtering to go pick that information. So that would be an example. And again, I don't see any of this as being earth-shattering. Just kind of, hey, I thought out of the box this way, and maybe you have another way to do that, or you have a good example. So, Colin, that's kind of what I was thinking about for the next presentation.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Pete. That's what I was hoping you were going to be covering as well. And I've got lots of examples of ways where I've used normal data, but with non-normal interfaces, if you like, there. So I might discuss some of those with you as well as further possibilities of timetabling and so on. But anyway, that's great.
I have one question. Sorry to interrupt, Pete. The treeview. Do you work with the normal treeview or with an VBA treeview, which is done with declares? Because I have one person once did a treeview and did it via declares and without any DLL.
Yeah, so I can do 3 ways. So I've done, there is the MS Common Control treeview, which I use the most often. But I will say, I'm nervous. That thing is old. It's not well supported. There's also a third-party one that they've built. JKP Consulting built one, built entirely using MS Forms. Pretty impressive VBA. So it's a little more portable. Doesn't have all the features, but it is pretty stable and it's pretty usable. And I've faked in some tree views using list boxes, so it kind of looks like a tree view, but it's purely native. And so I'll include that as well.
Yeah, I see. Because I've done all of that. What you're saying, because one German guy did a tree view which looks like a tree view, which works like a tree view, but it's normal forms. And that's very impressive.
Okay, that could be the I'm not sure which one, but if you look in my previous demo, I have a link to the JKP, which is all MS Forms.
Yes, I know. I know the JKP that one. No, it's not that one.
Oh, okay, it's another version. Okay, great.
Because the one they did it with so that it works with Excel as well, and I think the forms are so small, so I like the other.
Maybe if you can send me the link,
and
I'll forward it to
what
I'll try to do.
You give me the email, then I do it directly.
Well, I'd like to see it anyway, Klaus. So include me in on it if you do it directly. Yeah. But right, I'm going to move on. Quickly show this slide. It's been put off 4 times now. I've been in contact with the Access team to see whether it really will be ready to meet the deadlines that it says on the Access website there, and whether, in other words, whether I'll have anything to show you there. And I have to say, I think I may well have to come up with a new subject for August there. So I may do automatic form resizing, my own code. I may do something totally different, but it may well, unfortunately, still not be ready then. There are various reasons, good reasons, why that may be the case there. Right. Are we all wrapped up, or are there any questions? Lots and lots of people have said thank you to Domenico for what was an excellent presentation. As I said, made my life very easy in terms of being an editor. Domenico, is there anything you wanted to come back and say?
Just to say once again, thank you very much for the opportunity. And there's other opportunities in the future to present on graphical user interfaces and more. I hope this is just one of the many times that we'll be interacting with each other going forward. Again, thank you for this opportunity.
I think we have to thank you for the presentation.
Very, very impressive. We'll thank you, Domenico, for giving up so many hours in preparing that. And finally, I'm just going to say, for those on the beta version of Access, if you haven't actually been on recently, let me just see if I can quickly do this. The Monaco SQL editor, there are a series of improvements being done at the moment. Unfortunately, one of them, the one that was going to come first, has not been delivered yet. And they're going to do speedy loading. So that delay that you get there is going to be a thing of the past fairly soon. But you notice that the SQL has opened into what I call pretty formatting, or automatically expanded. We've asked them to allow you to toggle it back again. If you pasted in SQL into a Monaco editor, there'll also be a keyboard control and K, that will allow you to auto expand it as well. But also, for the first time, you will be able to, just like in SQL Server, select part of the SQL, and then new drop down in the run thing, you can then run just the part that you have selected there. So you will no longer be limited to all or nothing and making new SQL there. You will be able to test out the effect of filtering and not filtering, and also do temporary queries and union clauses, individual ones, and so on. So lots of new power in Monaco. It will be much improved as a result of that, and nearly all the bugs have been knocked out of it as well. So do have a look at the it's almost worth being on the beta version. There are so many things that are now becoming available. The rate of new features and improved features is increasing all the time. All go off and have your tea or whatever you wish to do at this time of night. Thank you again to Peter, thank you again to Domenico, and thank you all for attending.